All righty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have my co-host here, Merriel Solesky. Say hi, Merriel.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
I see that today you have a better camera, looking good, looking good.
Yes,
The
gotta step up the technology stuff.
and but I do want to say your beard is looking a little bit scruffy there. So
Yeah, I think so.
with the beard with the better camera, we can see kind of a little bit better your beard going.
Yeah, my broken nose, my beard, my scars, crow's feet.
Yeah,
Maybe it's too good of a camera.
maybe
We
it's
need to
too
go back
good.
to go back to the poor quality where you can't see much.
Well, I know some of our viewers, or our viewers who are on here right now, were expecting us to talk with Daniel Hayes. Unfortunately, he had something come up again. Again, life comes up. It's okay. And we are, as fishermen, we're very good at adapting to the situation.
Right.
So this time we had our guest Timothy Rodman come on board. He's a great guy, local kayak angler, fishes some of the bass fishing tournaments here in Texas. So I think it'd be a great resource for us because I don't know bass fishing. Um, yeah, I know Merrill, you know a little bit more bass fishing, but I don't think you would consider yourself an expert. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually. Well, I wouldn't say I know a little bit more than you, but
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. So
no, but yeah, I do bass fishing. I guided a couple trips out of Sheldon. No secret, right? But yeah, I know a little bit, but not too much. I actually went and bought some baits the other day for
awesome.
bass fishing. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think today we pivoted over to, we're going to ask Tim here more about kind of the local Houston kayak and bass fishing scene that we have here. Maybe just kind of briefly go through to some of the lakes and techniques and all that. Uh, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us because for me, I'm definitely gonna be taking notes. And I'm not a bass guy. I fish brackish water sometimes and I catch bass on accident targeting like trout, reds, and flounder. So and I've been like specifically bass fishing a handful of times. And so I think I'll learn a lot. And hopefully y'all guys listening will learn a lot as well. Before we get started, definitely wanted to bring up our sponsors. We have 30 South Kayak Anglers, a Facebook group that is just a great place to be if you're looking to go into kayaking and to share your reports, share your stories, talk kayak fishing around the Texas coast. 30 South Kayak Anglers. Also 4A Printing, they do a lot of our custom stuff. I have still need to talk to Aaron about getting our towel order in. I started the conversation and I completely forgot about it. But he does custom stuff like our towels, and also like he can do this buff. This is an awesome buff with our logo on it. So if you're looking for some custom stuff like that, go ahead and talk to Aaron. And also, of course, Knock and Tail Lures. My go-to soft plastics. They are basically paddle tail. They are paddle tails with a rattle in the back. One of my favorite colors is this lime. Um, I forgot the actual name. I know Michael's probably going to kill me. It's a lime electric something, but it's a lime and
Okay.
white, chartreuse and white with a built-in rattle
I
in
get
the
it.
back. Awesome for flounder, awesome for trout and redfish, and I think they're a big game changer with these paddle tails. So if you're looking for some, go ahead and go to one of your local shops or go search Knocking Tail Lures online, and you can find them and order them there. Um, so before we bring Tim on board, Merrill, do you have any updates, any stories you wanted to share about, since our last time we talked?
I can
Sorry.
talk about when the last time we went fishing. But no, I want to get Timothy on. He's a
Okay.
good
Yeah.
friend of mine. I guess that was yeah. And then because I feel like there's a lot of bass stuff that I feel like, and then maybe I'll tell a story of like when I went bass fishing because nothing exciting really happened. I know you guys are catching big trout, but
Yeah.
but it's just been we've been kind of on this redfish stuff that people just like redfish, and you know redfish just doesn't excite me. Just I don't have much to say other than we're sight casting redfish. you know.
Well, we're just gonna bring Timothy Rodman on. Yeah, I don't know what to say about, but redfish doesn't excite Merrill here. I
Hey,
would.
I don't second that statement. That's all Merrill right there. I love redfishing.
Okay, good for you. I know you actually come down here to the coast and catch them. You and your buddies, right? Come to the.
Yeah, I just follow Desmond and Michael, man. I don't know what I'm doing.
They tell you where to cast and
They
everything.
get me near them. Yeah, that's what I'm there for.
Yeah. Now we've been
Well,
doing a lot of sight casting on them, so it's been like schools, hey, they're over here, they're over there, or they should be in this point or this gut, and they've been pretty thick. And I know a lot of people are getting on some big trout right now. I haven't been on I haven't been fishing for them, but I would like to catch me some big trout. That'll get me
Yeah,
going.
well, um, Tim, I guess to kind of introduce yourselves, I know we had you on as a guest probably like a year or two ago. Seems like a while. Uh, talking about traveling and fishing, which you still do, but really want to talk about your forte and bass fishing and kayaking and all that. So, kind of, if you had a baseball card, what would your baseball card on the back say about you?
uh, spent this much money on tournaments, only made this much money winning tournaments. It would be a negative number card. That's what it would be. No,
Well, it seems
it's
like you're fishing a tournament like
yeah.
every weekend, and I
Oh
always
yeah,
see you
man. There's
somewhere.
tournaments everywhere. You can choose to fish kind of every weekend, honestly, if you want to. Especially right now, springtime with bass season is when all the tournaments really start kicking off. So,
Mm.
but Chris Morales, I mean, y'all probably know Chris Morales a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I know him a little bit. I sent him a friend request. He hasn't accepted it yet. So,
yeah, he's.
yeah, he's
I'll
like,
text him. I'll
yeah,
text him and let him know you're not spam. So,
yeah, yeah. Tell him that.
no,
Well, and
him
then he
and
actually messaged. He actually messaged me. We had a little conversation a
yeah,
while back, but other than
yeah,
that,
him and Chris Delgado out of Bryan College Station, man, they've got the trail. It's called the Texas Kayak Bass League now. It was Southeast Texas, now it's Texas Kayak Bass League, and man, they've done a really good job with that this year. And a lot of good lakes in the area. I'm pretty sure we've had well over 100 on each tournament.
yeah, they're
You know,
good payouts. I see that. He
good
always goes
numbers, yeah,
right.
good payouts. I mean, it's a good community as well. Like a lot of people help out in the community. Y'all know how the kayak angling community is. It's just different.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've got a great trail going, man. They're fishing probably the best lakes you can fish in this part of Texas as
Mm.
part of their trail. So yeah,
Like
y'all should definitely
Sheldon,
check it out.
they're
Like
fishing.
Sheldon.
Yeah, no shell. No, we've done that a couple times, man. That was chaos.
Was it?
That lake is not big enough for a bass fishing tournament, man. This is just
Man, I
not.
feel like it's huge, right?
No.
Like, but like maybe not for you guys. You guys, because there's 100 of you guys or more,
Yeah.
so y'all need something like Conroe or
Yeah, everybody knows about Sheldon. That's no secret.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, so I was looking whenever previously I worked in marketing for Solesky Sports, and we were trying one of the things that the Solesky Sports that we sell is paddle boards, some stuff for boaters, and we have a lake crowd, uh, and I was doing research on some of the popular lakes around some of our stores, and I was in the Houston area. I'm looking up like Livingston. I looked up Sheldon, and it's like okay, so they seem pretty big. And then you compare it to like some of like these lakes out there, like Lake Lake
Toledo
Mead,
Bend.
or like some of these like Lake Amistad or something like that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so these are like tiny
Yeah.
compared to some of these other lakes.
Yeah.
On Alaska, Lake Livingston, right? You're
Yeah,
like,
Yeah,
what?
Livingston's, oh, dude, Livingston's huge. Lake Livingston is a big lake.
yeah.
We've
Yeah.
had a tournament out there, man, and the wind got up the second day, and
You
it
know,
was interesting out on the main lake. So
like you have
definitely
fun
fun,
like
really.
with stripers too there. Like I love the stripers over there in Lake Livingston.
Yeah, white
Uh,
bass too, man. It's a great
yeah.
white bass lake.
Oh yeah.
Great white bass lake.
We troll around. What is it? Pelican? What is it? Pelican Island or
You thinking of Seawolf Park here?
no? No, no. There's an island. I don't know the name of it, but we just troll around that. And we just catch stripers and white
Yeah,
bass and stuff like
yeah.
that, and just trolling around it and pretty good
I
wave.
mean, a lot of those guys will go up the river, like they'll go up the north end and up the rivers and stuff because there's monster gar up in there in the Trinity system.
Right.
And you see them. You're out there on a kayak, man, and you'll just see these monster gar come up next to you, just
Yes.
feeding. It's kind of eerie for a while, and you get used to it. They're in there, man. They've got big ones.
Yeah, I think the record comes from Trinity, right?
Yeah, probably. The whole river system's got all those monster gar in there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of break them down a little bit, and let's talk about some of these more popular areas to fish around the Houston area. And of course, as we have time, we'll keep going further and further out. Um, and I know you heard us backstage, but like I'm a complete beginner on bass fishing, and I'm not afraid to admit that. I've only been on a handful of bass fishing trips, and actually both of them were in California. So I'm fishing like 30, 50
A little
feet
different.
lakes. Yeah, it's a little different than what we
A
have
little
here, I'm
different.
assuming. Um, and and so yeah, so feel free to lay on the knowledge, because I'm going to be taking notes. But let's start with Sheldon, because I am kind of familiar with it just from people talking about it. Let's describe Sheldon, for people who haven't been there before.
Yeah.
Also, I do want to make the caveat that there are tons of gators there. So if you're not familiar with the area, definitely go with a buddy and just be aware that there's gators there. But let's just go and dive into Sheldon. What's
Yeah,
Sheldon all
Sheldon.
about?
Yeah. Well,
Do you want me to
those gators are pets. Those are like pets out there. They're like dogs. They don't mess with you. They know us. They're
Oh,
like,
well, I wouldn't. No, I think when it's breeding season, I've heard some stuff where they like chase people in their kayaks.
yeah, they'll pop out at you sometimes and scare you off a little bit. Some of them have got some fish and people were hooking them before and stuff, but yeah, they usually leave you alone. It's
Yeah.
you can get the little baby ones to come up to your kayak sometimes. It's kind of probably a stupid idea, but it is what it is.
Hit them with the paddle, just scare them away.
No,
You know?
frog. You just let them chase a little frog.
Oh yeah.
But no, Sheldon. I mean, a lot of people know Sheldon, right? But Sheldon is just its own unique little area in Northeast Houston. It's a state park actually, that's completely free, no gates and stuff, obviously, and it's got a bunch of flooded cypress trees. Whole rows of islands going down it. Lots of reeds and stuff in the back and lily pads. There's grass in there. It is unlike any lake in this area, which is kind of what makes it awesome, right? It's a big bass factory. There's big bass everywhere in there. That lake probably gets called more than any other freshwater lake in the area for people actually eating the bass, right? But I think it helps it because there's some really big ones in there, right? And so it kind of keeps that population thinned out a little bit. Uh, it's a great lake. You can fish kind of whatever you want. Swim baits out in the open water, over the grass, spinner baits, especially. And then you can go flip cypress trees. Like Merriel knows, there's a whole line of flooded cypress go all the way down the middle of this lake. Just a line of flooded cypress.
Yes.
You could flip trees all day if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could flip. Yeah, the whole day. You probably.
Yeah, it's an awesome lake. You can go flipping jigs. They really like jigs in there. I mean, people don't like throwing jigs into the cypress trees with a bunch of grass around it because you can get them mucked up. But if you can get it right up on the trees inside the grass, that jig goes down in there really well and doesn't get hung up very easy. And they really like jigs there. So,
Right.
Cranky rig worms.
Yeah.
Little weightless worms, man. With a little fairy wand spinning a rod, you can just throw a weightless worm up against the trees and you'll catch fish.
Fluke. I like throwing a fluke out there too sometimes.
Yeah, weightless plastics, man.
Yeah.
Tear it up.
Yeah. Frogs. I love the frog bite there. That was my first time there. Was Stephen Fisher. I don't know if you know. He also fishes a lot of tournaments, and we both went out there, and I was throwing frogs and the blow ups. Oh, actually, no. I went to fishing before me and Steven we met up, and I fished it the day before, and I was having so much blowups on these frogs. Like, man, it's like the frog bite there can be addicting because I mean the blowups are just monster. I think I even caught it. Is it like a snakehead? They got snakeheads in there, right?
Yeah,
Snakeheads, yeah. So I caught
yeah,
because I don't know the difference between a snakehead and a steelhead yet, or if there is. I don't know
yeah.
what there is.
But I think it's a bowfin actually. It's bowfin.
Is it bowfin? Okay, a
Yeah,
bowfin.
bowfin.
Yeah. So what? I caught one of those, and I thought, like, man, this thing, like, this bass can fight, like, because usually the bass they're a good 1 to 2 minutes, and the sucker's like flopping on hydrozilla. You're bringing a whole bunch of hydrozilla or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like this one was like fighting. I was like, wow, this is a good bass, and it was a bowfin. But
And then you pull it out and you net it, and you've never seen one before. And you're like,
yes,
oh, what is this? And then you see it's got razor sharp teeth. You're like,
yes,
oh, I
yeah,
probably shouldn't stick my finger in that one's mouth.
yeah. Oh no, I definitely didn't do
True.
that. No, I like kind of like boat flip, like picked up the line and put up like on the
Yeah,
boat on the kayak.
yeah, they have super sharp teeth. They're super fun to catch. They're almost like redfish. They'll bulldog you a lot, right? And
Yeah,
it's awesome. But they're slimy and they stink and they got
yeah,
sharp teeth.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
no
they're a
good.
good fight though, right? Like I'm
Oh
starting
yeah,
to become one of those people that, like, I used to hate catching Jack Crevalle, with switching to salt for a
yeah,
little bit, but then like them and ladyfish, right? Is that lady? Yeah, ladyfish. But then I'm starting to enjoy the fights, right? Because they don't stay on the hook long enough, or they fight really, really hard, right? So, like, I'm
yeah.
starting to like the fights that these fish give, even that a lot of people that don't like catching.
All right, so we can't pot lick Merrill anymore because he could be on a school of ladyfish just sitting out
Yes,
there.
yes. So you know, so you know.
Hey, I
But
actually know what you're talking about. I'm actually
yeah,
no, man, Sheldon is just if you like bass fishing and you're in Houston and you just want an easy place to go, Sheldon's a great spot, right? Because you can kind of fish the reeds, you can fish the grass, you can fish the trees, you can fish the islands with laydowns and stuff. Um, it's just different every year. You never know how much grass they're going to spray down and whatnot, or if they're going to let it grow up. I think it was like 2 years ago. Was it two
yes.
years ago, Mariel? That was
It
super
was
thick?
bad, dude. It
Or
was
3 years
thick.
ago? Yeah.
No, it's two, maybe it's 2 to 3 years,
It was
but it
three.
was
Yeah.
like, yeah, like it was thick, dude. I mean, just thick. But I mean, the good thing though is that actually opened up more of an opportunity to catch fish because you'd fish the edge of that hydrozilla or the pockets where like the boats ran through it, right?
Yeah.
So like you'd fish those openings or you didn't have very many holes, right? But if you threw in one of those holes, that increased, like, you're like making the bass like what's the word? They're targeting bait. Like it was a little bit easier, right?
Yeah.
So to speak. But I mean, you
Yeah.
can
When
still
it,
flip the cypress trees. You can still flip the,
yeah. Like when it's
island
clear,
and
a lot of
lily
boats go
pads.
out there, right? Because it's
Right.
easy fishing in the Houston area, so you'll see tons of boats, right? But when it gets real grown up and thick, the boats don't go out there as much, and it's kind of awesome. I mean, you have to paddle. I had to paddle my PA across the top of it.
Oh,
Horrible. But once you're back there, and like we would get on a good frog bite, right? Like Merriel's talking about. Frog is a great bait to throw for bass fishing, just in general, but Sheldon especially, just throwing a frog around. And if you get all the way back there and throw a frog around, you would get a giant. I mean, multiple giants a lot of times because
yes.
they would be back in the thick stuff,
Yes.
right? And like in holes and little alleys, kind of little alleys going through there, or you find them in a boat lane. Like if a boat did go back there and clear a little bit, they'd be sitting right into this, right?
Yes.
And just ambushing stuff, just like a redfish, man. They're just chilling and being lazy until something crosses their face.
So what I'm gathering from this conversation is that Sheldon, if you wanted to gain confidence in actually bass fishing, Sheldon is the way to go because basically every single textbook situation that you can probably come across, besides like super deep water,
Right.
you could probably find it in Sheldon and catch fish with it.
I'm gonna make this statement. A lot of people probably won't like it, but it's like the causeway trout fishing of fish and bass. Like that's when the lights were on. So that, like if you're gonna go you're gonna go catch trout, right? The causeway lights are on, but maybe not at a certain time, but you just take your time and just due diligence. Sometimes they won't bite right now, but they will bite. You just got to be persistent, but you will catch a bass. You just sometimes you might have to wait a couple hours for the bite to turn on, but if you be
They're
patient,
moody. They're
yeah,
moody fish. Look, they're
yeah.
divas. They're lazy divas, and they sit there, and when they're hungry and they want to eat, like they'll eat, right? But when they don't want to eat, they just won't eat. You can throw a million things in front of their face.
Yeah.
So these guys with the live scopes, you'll see it now. Like you can watch the fish, right? You can see what it's doing with your bait, and you'll just see fish follow your bait, follow, and just you throw all you want, and they just don't want to bite, right? And then it turns back on, like Merriel said, and all of a sudden you're catching them all, right? It's just it's a patience game. But the cool thing about Sheldon is that you can you can go fish different stuff to figure out where they are biting, right? And I kind of like that. And then it is a smaller lake, so I've got a Newport on the back of mine. I'm sure other people have motors. It's really easy to get across a lake like that and just zig around until you find them. It's I don't know. I'm not like a big daytime saltwater fisherman. I cheat and I go to the lights because like
That's not cheating, right? The name of
yeah,
the game is to catch fish, right?
yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying going out there and cast net or gill net them or anything like that. I'm just
No,
saying,
that's fade it, man. That's fade it. That's what people do, fade it over there.
yeah,
But like sometimes it's just about covering water until you figure it out. It's a patience game. And you know what they should be biting, you're just not in the right place. They're not turned on over there. You got to go find them where they are. So right now is the shad spawn, right? We're kind of getting out of the bass spawn, on the middle, the back end of it, at least in these lakes around here. And so all the shad are spawning. You'll see all the flickering and stuff at night. You go shine a spotlight at night, they'll just start flickering everywhere. And then early in the morning, especially, is when the bass are just tearing it up right now because they're up there gorging on shad. So like spinner baits, chatter baits, little swim baits, any of that kind of stuff. Even glide baits, like smaller glide baits right now, you'll tear it up in the morning for bass.
Awesome. I know we have some of the questions that we have in the chat right now. Do you have any tips for somebody trying to use frogs more? So actually, funny thing about frogs, I've used frogs before, and I only fish I've ever caught in frogs are actually redfish. And the reason why I have them is because whenever during the springtime now, we have these bull tides for saltwater, and it will just flood some of these grass areas, and the redfish will go up in there. But of course, there's grass,
Yeah,
so you need like a weedless presentation, such as a frog, where you just kind of burn it through the top, and either they'll follow it out or they'll just blow up on it in there, and you have to horse it out. You have to use like the heaviest action rod that you could find and 50-pound braid and just bust
yank
them
them
I
out.
out,
do.
just
Yeah.
yank them out.
Oh, we're going frog fishing for redfish now.
Yes,
Now I have
yes.
to try this.
I
Like
think,
this,
yeah. 80
frog is my
Salinas,
favorite.
right? 80 Salinas did a video on Galveston saltwater page, I think, where he was catching them on white frogs, redfish, and everybody's like, "Oh man, it's like
What?
it was a huh?"
Oh, I'm trying this. This is happening now.
Yeah, I'm blowing Tim's mind because we're at the at the fishing show. I was talking to him about punching grass, the seaweed mats that we had a few years ago for trout.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I wouldn't see this. We're so much alike. We're all
Yes.
brothers.
Yeah. Yes. So I got a question for
We
Tim.
just blow all our money up
So
here.
yeah, we all spending money. I just bought a jackhammer. What is it? Jackhammer bait? Does that mean?
Oh, the
You know,
chatterbait? Yeah, the
yes.
chatterbait.
$16 and some change.
Yeah, it's stupid expensive.
Yeah. So hopefully I
Stupid.
don't lose that bad boy when I go out this week.
Uh,
But like, so when would I go for like lily pads versus like the banks and stuff? Like, what's a good like transition? Like, we'll just stick to Sheldon, right? So like, when would you go to like say, okay, this is where I typically catch bass at this season. This is when I start throwing on lily pads, or are they just all scattered and then you just got to try different things? Like, what would be your game tactic? Say if you were trying to focus on a big bass, Sheldon.
yeah. So like right now, you can still get them up shallow. I mean, most of the fish are gonna be shallow, right? So the common misconception is bass go up, they spawn, and then they go back out, right? In Sheldon, it definitely doesn't work that way because it's 4 to 5 feet deep in most of that lake, right? So it doesn't really work. But they don't actually go very far. They stay around where they spawn. They stay shallow, in that like 10 to 2 foot range, give or take, and they just eat because they're hungry, right? You just got to think they just got done making a bunch of babies, and so they're hungry and ready to feed. And so right now, it's honestly about covering water, right? And it's not really the structure per se. In the mornings, if you can find a shad spawn in the morning, whether it's on a break wall, on lily pads, on Sheldon, the shad love to spawn on those. Back in the reeds, right up on the trees. You can find a shad spawner right now. You're going to find bass. I mean, they will be there right now, and they're probably going to be gorging pretty heavy. And then when the sun comes up, you're still going to find some spawners right now. So check out all the real shallow stuff, like back in the reeds, back on the bank lines, behind the grass. Looking for those beds. You're still going to find them. So you can get those. But honestly, covering water as we transition through April is going to start becoming the more common thing to do. So like that chatterbait he bought, right? It's just slinging that chatterbait covered in water to find the fish. And then, if you catch them in an area, you can slow down and say, okay, now I'm going to pick this area apart with like a worm or a jig or something and get all of the other ones that aren't biting the moving baits per se, right? But like, I start throwing a frog in February, at the end of February. And I do it early because it just pisses off fish if they are shallow and you sit it over top of them. Like they just get mad at it, I think. I really, that's my theory. I can't confirm that. I just think they get mad at it and they'll hit it. But then once you start getting into April, really that's when the frog bite starts turning on big time. And then May, it's on at that point. So hollow body frogs, buzz baits is another really good one, and you just cover water with it, and you'll find them. I mean, Merriel knows once that frog bite turns on, you'll catch some good ones. They love a frog. So,
yeah, some good ones.
See, I'm all excited just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I gotta go to Sheldon again.
Yeah. But
Well, like I said, I guess it's the same thing like a topwater though. It's like you have to feel that weight, and then that's when you kind of set the hook.
So with the buzzbait, like when they hit a buzzbait, man, you're gonna get them or you're not gonna get them, right? I mean, they smash those, and it's open hooks, right? So I use a trailer hook on my buzzbaits, even in the grass and the thick stuff, just because I don't like to, I use a heavier rod. I use more like a heavy, so I'm throwing it up and stuff, and so you have the tendency to also lose fish that way. So I like to use a trailer hook. But hollow body frogs, the way everybody gets taught is you work it and you let them bite it, you give them a second, and then you hit them, right? But I do the reverse because I've lost too many fish waiting on them. And so, when they hit it, I hit them right back kind of thing. And then they're usually not very far down in the grass either. So I have an easier time getting them out of the grass too. Lily pads especially, like if you get caught up in lily pads, you better hang on. You're either going to get them or they're going to jerk their head off the hook and they'll be gone, right? But I don't wait. I hope nobody takes that advice and then loses fish. It is like, that guy's terrible.
No, that's actually was my first experience in Sheldon when I threw a frog. Is like I'll set, for me at that time, I was setting the hook too soon, right? I'm so used to like natural like reaction to set the hook right away from trout, right? But like when I let them eat it and then go down, like give them like 1 to 2 seconds. Not even that. It's just I see them eat it, I reel down, then set the hook.
Yeah, it's the reel down. That's your pot,
right?
Like mine is 2 cranks usually. Always, for some reason, it's always just like zzz, zzz, and then I'll hit them.
Right.
I guess everybody's got their number, but that reel down is all you really need. You just hit them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, they're gonna pull your bait down in the stuff, and you may lose them anyways, even if you get a hook in them.
Like so, trout, like in the saltwater aspect, like trout, sometimes for the most time, I set the hook like as soon as I feel that thick, boom, I'm setting the hook.
Yeah.
Like, and in some situations, so it's like a little, it's different, right? So
Yeah, bass. I mean, that's the thing about bass, right? They have hard parts of their mouth, like a redfish, right? But I've noticed, like when you get in a redfish's mouth, man, that hook is in there, right? And I don't know what it is about bass. They've got some soft spots, but it's got to be the way they shake their head and just kind of, bass are weird. They're shakers. They're like trout, man. They're thrashing, trying to get it out of their mouth, and it has a tendency to move that hook or alter that hook in there. And like if you don't get them really good, you can lose them, and especially if you're in stuff like those tree roots on the cypress trees. If you're throwing if they're right up under the roots, because those things are like fingers, and one pops his head out and grabs your worm, and then goes kind of pulls it back into that, and you let them take it too long. I mean, you're not getting that fish out.
yeah,
That's
happened. That's exactly what
it's
happened.
happened.
Yeah, you're like,
Ask
I'm
me
gonna let
how I
it
know.
go.
This happened to me way too many times.
Yeah, I let it drop like all the way down into the roots, right? And then like felt that big thump, boom, railed down and tried to set. He was all up in there. I was like, man, there goes that bait, right? Because then I knew I was hung up after. Yeah.
Yeah, those shelter fish. If you get a big one out there, they're aggressive. Like they get it and they immediately pull. I mean, they turn. I don't know what it is. They just turn their heads and pull. And so if you don't get them, I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
I think basically from that I'm gathering there's something to be said about popular wisdom and convention, but at the same time you just need to catch that fish. So in the situation with the frog being on top and waiting for that pullback, you just need to sometimes go for it, because if you get that pullback, it may be a little bit too late already.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially if you're up and stuff. I mean, that's just a thing. But I use a heavier rod for a frog. Like I pretty much use a heavy. I like a 7.2, 7.3 ish heavy. That's just worked out really well for me. I mean, a medium heavy is fine too, but a medium just will not work for a frog. The hooks are too big, and you're not going to really get it in their mouth, right? Really, medium heavy or heavy. You can use an extra heavy, but you might like rip their mouth off. So you might just step it down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Conroe now. I mean, we Sheldon is sounds like a very great place to kind of learn and have the chance to catch big ones. What about Conroe? I know they had one of those Bass Masters events or something like that a few years ago on Conroe. Yeah. What's kind of the anatomy and your take on Conroe?
Yeah, man, Conroe is a great lake. That's right by where I live. I live up in the Willis area. I'm right down the street from the lake. There's a few of us up there, and Conroe frustrates a lot of people because it can be a very difficult lake because there's so much stuff to fish. You're like, oh man, there's got to be fish here. Oh, there's got to be fish here, and you can get really frustrated really quick. Because it's half urban lake. The entire south half of the lake is urban. It's docks and breakwalls. And it's like a washing machine on a windy day. It's just back and forth waves the whole time. And then the north side is totally different. It's all forest, right? It's undeveloped, stumps, some grass is still left up there. It's coming back finally. Harvey washed out a lot of stuff, but Conroe's fishing really good right now. If you watch the tournament weights of the weekly tournaments they have up there, they're catching good bags. Sometimes they're hitting 30-pound bags, which is a great day. It's a great day for bass. And so Conroe is fishing very good right now. And I was out there the other day, actually, and I caught them all day on a spinnerbait. I just threw her on a spinnerbait all day, and they were just whacking it everywhere. We're in that time of the year where, like I said, they're all hungry, right? And so now they're all just chasing bait like crazy. They're chasing. There's my little pumpkin head. I love Kyle, man. He's great. Shout out, Kyle. I love it.
Which, by the way, for those of you listening online later on podcast, we are live every other Wednesday, or we try to be, at facebook.com/One Less Cast podcast. You could join the chat, talk to us, ask questions, and make fun of us. Like there's my little pumpkin head from Kyle talking to Tim here.
Yeah.
So
Hey, go check out Kyle's lures. He's making some pretty cool looking stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Is he the one making those? I thought he was just like sponsored by them. I didn't know he was making them.
No, he's making them.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
Heck
he's got
yeah.
some pretty cool stuff. Yeah. But Conroe, man, the shad spawn's rocking on Conroe too. So if you really want to have a great bass fishing day and you want to go somewhere to catch bass, and go to Conroe, and early in the morning, make sure you're there before the sun comes up and be throwing spinner baits, chatter baits, anything that looks like a shad, right? Swim baits, you name it. Underspins work great out there too. But if you're throwing that early in the morning, you're gonna have a blast. You're gonna whack them. Connor is fishing that good right now, and you can do that on both ends of the lake. So like the south end, you fish all around the bulkheads and the docks, right? And the shad love the wood. I've been getting up there on the wood, but then you go to the north side, and it's all about the grass on the bank lawn and the stumps, right? You're fishing around that. And then when that sun gets high, I mean, that's usually midday is when bass kind of chill out a lot of times, right? That 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock range, for some reason, they just get super lazy. It happens in tournaments, happens just fun fishing. And then all of a sudden around 12:30, 1 o'clock, they'll turn right back on, right?
It's lunchtime.
Yeah. So if you stop catching them on moving baits, I mean, switch to a finesse bait like Merriel's talking about. Throw a fluke around, or like a weightless Cinco, or just something real finessey, and you'll still catch them. But they're moody. They have turn off times. So it's kind of interesting. They're divas. They really are.
Yeah.
Think about it.
I haven't fished Lake Conroe, but my only experience with it was I was watching like the after like a TV show. They were showing people fishing on Lake Conroe during the Bassmaster event, and I forgot who it was, but there's this guy. He looked like he was in the middle of nowhere, like 50 yards away from shore, and just throwing this like deep crankbait, like
Yeah.
looks like the middle of nowhere, and he was just pulling up these like 4 or 5 pound fish every other cast. And I'm like, what the heck is this? You're in the middle. It seems like you're in the middle of the lake, but he was like 50 yards from shore, and he was just like there. I've been finding them here,
Yeah.
and to me that's intriguing, and I can see that as frustrating because for saltwater, at least in Galveston Bay and everywhere else, you're looking for those changes. And of course ours is I'm more targeting shallow water, and I'm never going to like the middle of the bay to look for fish. It's just I'm orienting myself to somewhere on land where I can see and understand where I'm going to be. So I guess if you're beginning to go into kayak bass fishing, what's like the easiest way to kind of understand that and get on that?
Yeah, so bass, I mean, they definitely move, right? And right now, yeah, they're shallow, right? But once the water starts warming up a little bit in May, they start moving off, right? Like you're talking about. The guy's out in the middle of the lake. You're like, what the heck is this dude fishing? And he's pulling up giants, right? That's how, like Jordan Lee, when the Classic was here, his last day, he was offshore fishing rocks. Just on a spot, and I think his motor actually messed up or something. So he was kind of stuck there with his trolling motor, and he saw some marks. And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna fish here," and start throwing a jig and start catching like 8, 9 pounders. They found a whole school of them and won the Classic in that spot, right? Just some random little rock pile, and that's really what bass fishing offshore is about. You have to just learn it. I've only been really fishing offshore a lot for the last like maybe 3 years. I used to mostly just be a shallow water guy. I could go find them shallow somewhere, but it's really hard to win a tournament in the freshwater scene now, not being able to fish offshore. So like my recommendation would be is if you're new to kayak fishing and you want to go bass fishing, and you're not catching them shallow and you want to go offshore, you're going to have to go be patient with your electronics because sometimes you got to cover a lot of area to be able to find what they're sitting on, So like lakes like Conroe, there's brush piles, lots of man-made brush piles that they like to go sit on, and that can be, anywhere from 10 feet all the way out to 20 feet of water, but rock piles. So bass are a lot like redfish, right? You get on the shell beds and stuff, and you can really find them on. It's bass are really similar in that way. If they find their shell in freshwater lakes, right? So if they find a shell bed or if they find something that's rocky, right? They love to get on that stuff. Old road beds. So really, I mean, bass fishing not shallow. If you're not just going to go get on that real good shallow bite, is about going to the high percentage areas and scanning around and finding that stuff, right? So you got to have the patience to know that you're not going to be able to throw it every spot you come across. But yeah, points. Lake Conroe is really good for offshore fishing, and people, you go around the points of Lake Conroe and the little secondary points in the creek arms, and you just scan around until you find brush piles, right, or rock piles, and see if there's fish sitting on them. Kind of like the crappie guys. They'll go out looking for trees on points and stuff, or on creek channels and things like that. They'll go look for that specifically until they find a tree that's just loaded with crappie, right? And then they'll sit there and just pick them off one by one. It's kind of the same concept. Bass are just a little less concentrated in one place compared to crappie. You may catch one off of a thing, you may catch 10 off of a thing, but you're not going to catch like 40 fish off of one spot a lot of times. So yeah, it's a patience game, especially Lake Conroe. It really is.
So why is that? Like some bass, they'll be in schools, right? And then some bass, they're not, right? They're like, I've seen them in schools of like 2 to 3, and then I've seen them in bigger schools. Like, is there like a rhyme to that reason, or is it just typical fish behavior?
I think bass are just weird. Bass are weird fish. They just are. I think that's why we love to chase them, is because they do make it difficult on you. Um, I think it's also lake dependent too. There are some lakes that they will school up really good, like Fayette. Fayette County Reservoir is only an hour from West Houston, right? And it's well known as a schooling bass lake, right? And Conroe is to an extent, um, a little bit, but then if you have something like Sheldon, you're not going to find very many of them right there with each other, right? And so I think it's very lake dependent on whether you're going to find really good schools of fish. Uh, but they did a study. I don't remember what it was. It's on YouTube. If you look up bass study on YouTube, it'll probably pop up. And these guys, they tagged these bass. I think it was Toledo Bend Reservoir over in East Texas, and they were like, "We're going to figure out what these fish do." And it was like random. So all the conventional wisdom that everybody's like, oh, they do this, and then they go back out and they do this. Well, a percentage of them did that, and then all the rest of them did their own thing, some random. So this really big one that they tagged, she was all the way in the back of this little slough. She went up there to spawn like normal. You would expect that from a bass, right? But then after she spawned, she didn't leave. She stayed all the way in the back until June, which is actually really hot. Like June is when we're looking offshore for bass. And she stayed back there until June. And then she moved out to a random stump for a month or two. And then was like, I'm ready to go back. And went all the way back to the back of the slough. And it's this giant bass that you're looking in the total wrong place for.
So that's the same. That's like same as saltwater fish. Like we like to say this is what they do, right? But there's, my opinion, there's no rhyme or reason. There's some they do patterns, but there's some there's no rhyme or reason. You just got to find them.
But like, see, so one of the YouTubers I watch is Greg Blanchard. Love his videos. Yeah, and I, that's where kind of where I only get my bass fishing knowledge from. And he does a lot of tournament videos, and I'm trying to relate to him what he does with my tournament experience. And like, for example, if I'm catching trout, if I catch one trout in like this drop off of an area, it goes from like 3 to 5, there's mixed shell, and I catch one trout there, I'm going to hit that area for like the next hour, 2 hours to catch the rest of my trout, because they theoretically, if one trout there should be more trout there.
Mhm.
And then, but for him, whenever he watches tournament videos, he's like, he starts shallow, and then 2 hours later, they're not shallow. He goes off and does it. He catches one fish, deep jigging, during jigs somewhere in 20 foot of water or whatever, and then he goes back shallow a mile down, and now he's throwing like a spinner bait, and he's picking off these fish. They're nice, obviously nice fish. He does really well in these tournaments, but it seems like it's almost random on what he's doing.
Yeah.
um, and there's like a pattern, quote unquote pattern, but when I'm looking at it, like, where's the pattern?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so prevailing wisdom, I think, is a good way to help you get the puzzle started. I guess that's the best way to describe it, right? Because you never know what fish are going to do. They're fish, man. Like, everybody gets so mad when they do bad at a tournament. I used to do it too. And then I started realizing, I'm like, dude, these are random fish that have a mind of their own. Like, you're just trying to figure them out, right? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And like what Greg does is I relate to that a lot. I'll start shallow a lot of times, unless it's summertime. I'll almost always start shallow and just go see, right? And then you piece the puzzle together from there. But picking apart an area is definitely a thing in bass fishing. I don't know if it's the same way for saltwater fish, but like if you catch one bass in an area, you should slow down a little bit, right? And then if you catch a second one in the area, you should really slow down and you should pick it apart, right? And that's kind of the point. You just throw a bunch of random stuff. You're just like, oh, can I get bit on this? Oh, well, they're biting this. Maybe they'll bite this too, And they've kind of done videos, and you see lures go through these bass, and you might catch one, but then there's like 7 or 8 other ones sitting by it, and they don't give a crap about your lure. So that's 7 or 8 more fish that you can try and target with something else. And so there's a lot of wisdom in what Drake does. I mean, there's a reason that guy's won a lot of money, right? He just kind of has the patience to slow down and kind of try and figure it out, and make those adjustments, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Adjustments is so key, especially in bass fishing when the bite turns off. Adjusting is where you can really make some money, trying to figure out what they are biting when they get moody. So
And I noticed, like, on tournaments, it's like sometimes it's kind of like our tournaments. Everybody does real good with big weights and stuff like that, and then sometimes it's very few that actually do decent or kind of good, like on these bass tournaments. It seems like I've been watching y'all's. I say you like you represent, but I've been watching bass tournaments, especially the ones that come out, the bass elites and stuff like that.
yeah, and then man, every lake's different too, man. There's some lakes that people just smash it. I mean, everybody's gonna catch fish. Fayette's one of those, right? It's like a Sheldon. There's fish everywhere. People are gonna catch fish. But yeah, in the tournament scene, man, it really is all about making those adjustments. And then you got to deal with all the boats too. The bass fishing scene. If you're expecting to fish a kayak tournament on a lake and you're like, oh, there's not going to be any boat tournaments, you're going to be really disappointed. There's always a boat tournament, especially in the spring. So you might as well just get ready to deal with it, right? And so that's another factor. Those boats go through there, and they're fishing too. But they're keeping fish, right? And they're putting them in their live well. And so you got to kind of think about that. If a boat's real heavy, like if an area is real heavy with boats, hey, maybe I shouldn't spend too much time over here, kind of stuff. Little details like that matter for sure.
Is there like etiquette, like because I know some tournaments like these bass, they're like fishermen, they're like right on top of each other, and I know that's like tournament rules, right? You got to be, I don't know if you got to be so many feet from each other or what, but some of these bass people, I see them like literally, like not even, they're right on top of each other, fishing the same spot, and it's like, so what's like a good etiquette? Like, what would be good etiquette as a tournament bass fisherman fishing with the boat bass fisherman, or just boats close by? Like, what's good etiquette? Because I know theirs might be different than saltwater fishing, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got their different things that they say about this. For me, I try not to get within a couple of casting distances at least. Like, it's not cool if you're so close to somebody that they can cast and hit your kayak, right? That means you're way too close. Um, it's hard to speak to on tournament day though, because people aren't thinking the same way. There's money on the table, and especially boat tournaments. They're real competitive about that, and so people can rub shoulders in the wrong way too. But my suggestion would be, just be nice, man. Just communicate. Like if you want to fish an area, say you're pre-fishing that area as well, and you want to fish an area, you can. And somebody's already there. You can say, "Hey, man, I was fishing this area. Do you mind if I go over here and fish that part of the area?" If you just ask, a lot of times people will say yes, right? Because then we don't want to be the rude ones. It, but it's just courteous, and I think that's what a lot of people forget to do in tournament fishing in general is just be nice and ask. Some of us, especially in bigger tournaments, we'll see each other in spots pre-fishing, and we know each other's catching fish. So we'll say, hey, are you going to start here, or is this like a spot that we can both fish, or how do you want to do this? We'll talk about it beforehand, right? Especially if somebody else is going to be fishing the same spot, you might as well just talk about it, so you both know you're going to be there. Uh, there's a right way to do it for sure. It's just being nice. Don't cut people off. That's a good rule for everybody. Don't cut off a boat when they can run you over. It's also a good rule for people.
That was gonna be my thing. A boat's much bigger than a kayak, so
yeah. As much as they make you mad sometimes, don't make them so mad they're gonna run you over. That's a bad idea. Yeah, no, I mean it gets crowded. It just does. I'm sure it does for y'all too. I'm sure there's boat tournaments out there just like us, right? And people are out there fishing, and then you got to deal with local stuff. It's open water, it's public water. You're never going to have it to yourself, hardly ever, unless it's a private lake. So just being courteous goes a long ways.
Speaking of courtesy, and the amount of tournaments that are on lakes, I remember I was working at retail, talking to this guy coming into Field and Stream here in Houston, and he was buying some baits, and he actually basically became a regular. Came in like every week, restocking on worms and whatever else that he needed. Um, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been I love kayak and fishing and all that. I've been going to this lake like probably like once or twice a month." And I'm about to retire actually, and so I won't be coming around that often. But I bought a house on that lake, and I'm going to be fishing like and for my dock lunch and my kayak and fishing like every day basically.
Nice.
Um, and get away from all the bozos on the weekends, because he usually fishes on the
Yeah.
weekends. A couple months later, he comes back and he said it wasn't that all that cracked up to be. There's tournaments on weekdays too.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, if you live on a popular fishing lake, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be busy. Rayburn, Sam Rayburn's one. A lot of people go fish Rayburn, and I mean not just bass fishermen too. Lots of crappie guys. It's a great crappie lake, and it gets crowded even during the week. Sheldon, I've been in Sheldon during the week, and there's parking lots full. Man, when the bite's good, people are going fishing out there. So crowded is just a thing. I don't think you can get away from it anymore. Not around here, at least.
Yeah, but the best tasting bass is around 8 to 10 pounds.
Dude.
I'm just teasing.
I love bass. Bass. I think bass tastes good. Just please don't eat my money fish. Anything over 18 inches.
You gotta soak that meat into tournament angler tears to get that saltiness in there.
Terrible. And if I catch a 27-inch redfish, I put it back just for you, buddy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I probably won't catch it on tournament day. Any other day I'll catch it, but on tournament day,
mentally, it makes me think I'm helping you.
Oh, okay. All right.
So actually, before I know we're kind of running up on our hour that we usually plan for this, and I know we could continue talking more about bass fishing. Which, by the way, for those of you listening, if you want to hear more bass fishing stuff, let us know. Send us a message, comment anywhere. Just figure out a way to tell us. Email us. Our email's on our Facebook page, facebook.com/OneLastCastPodcast. Just tell us that you want to hear more bass fishing content, and we'll see what we can do about that. But for let's go through some of the questions. I know we have a kind of ignored some of our live listeners here. Um, so if you were to pick a bait for bass fishing, your best baits for bass fishing, what would it be? Obviously, that's a loaded question because it's like it depends
Right
on like
now,
where you are.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
time of the year, but
yeah.
I
Well,
say
let's.
like this time of the year,
What about
obviously just a
morning? Let's
worm,
start off with the
you know,
morning. I think you put morning, right?
like a weightless worm,
Okay.
right? Um, Up shallow, especially, because especially in March, right? March and April, lots of fish up shallow spawning. So a weightless worm, a real light Texas rig weight worm, always is a classic to use. And then underspins, swim baits, and spinner baits. Uh, I'll be throwing those all the way through the end of May, just because the shad spawn will just keep going and going and going, and they're just up there gorging on shad. So, if you're newer to bass fishing and you just really want to go catch fish and kind of get the groove for it, it's hard to go wrong with a shad colored spinner bait. I mean, it's just really hard to go wrong with that, just because bass always eat shad all year long. They eat shad and they eat bluegill too, right? That's a big part of their diet year round. They like to follow that, and so spinnerbait is always a good option. And then a chatterbait, like Merriel was talking about, a chatterbait is also a really good option. I saw somebody ask about a trailer for a chatterbait, right? And your trailer can make a big difference in how it swims. Um, some people will use paddle tails, right, to give it a real big, bulky profile. I really like using a grub. Um, a white chatterbait, I throw a white grub on there. Green pumpkin chatterbait, I'll throw green pumpkin grub on there and dye the tail a little chartreuse, make it look like a little bluegill, right? But that grub tail has just got that crazy action, right? And it just drives them nuts. So I really like that, But there's some people they love the crawfish trailer, because the little tails move like this, or if you put it sideways, it'll do that, right? Um, some people swear by it. I think my best advice for that is just play around with it. See what you get your confidence in, right? It's a confidence bait thing. My confidence trailer is a grub. Even on a swim jig head, I'll still throw a grub and it does great, right? Um, some people have their confidence in just big old trailers on the back of their stuff. Throw it around and see what you like. That's
My
that's probably the best advice I could say on that one.
my favorite trailer to put on a chatterbait is a knock and tail lure because like I'm thinking about it, it's already loud and flashy enough. Some more paddling and rattling noises,
Does that have the? Is that the one with the real little tails, the real flexible small tails?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. See, little anything that's flexible on the back of the chatterbaits does really well because it's got a lot of movement, right? It's the random movement that drives the bass crazy. Because they have those lateral lines. That's how they feel your bait. And so they feel that movement in it. They're like, ooh, and just gets them all fired up. Or they'll follow your bait and you can watch them on your electronics, and then they just turn around and piss you off. That happens a lot.
Another question that we have, and I think you kind of answered this, but if you're frog fishing, what is the best rod in action to use for frog fishing?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's definitely a heavy rod. I like a heavy, 7 footage rod, uh, and I like to use a heavy with a fast action. Medium heavy with a fast action will work really well too. You want the faster action though. The reason you want that fast action is so it can pick up that line quicker. Um, it just hits them faster and harder. And like we were talking about with the frog bait, you're usually fishing up in some stuff around grass or trees or reeds or whatever. You want to hit them hard, get the hook in, and get them out. And so a heavier rod kind of helps you do that. Now, if you hook into a small fish on it, you might actually sling the fish a little bit, but no, it works great, especially in cover. So a
Yeah,
heavy
just
rod for sure.
I think you call them green missiles whenever you like the tiny
Yeah,
little
green rockets, man.
green
Fish
rockets. Yeah,
pickles,
just they fly
fish
out towards you.
pickles, green rockets. Yeah, rotten green fried fish, whatever you want to call them.
And so it's kind of a two-part question here that we're getting. Nick's been asking a lot of questions, so thanks again to Nick for asking all these questions in our chat. Um, kind of like explain again. I think you explained this already in before you're talking, but whenever you're using worms, what kind of the best time you're using it? And I think the way you answered it is, especially like finessing whenever you want to use them. But when's the best time to use worms and also crawls?
Yeah, so crawfish, you can kind of throw those year round too, but crawfish, I really like crawfish in the wintertime, and moving up pre-spawn because crawfish are really nutritious. They have a lot of nutrients, and the bass really eat them heavy. So with a bass, if you go bass fishing and you catch one, you look in its throat, right? And there's two kind of, they almost look like big lima beans in the back of their throat, right? And those are the chompers, right? And those help crush the crawfish. Well, if they're real red, then you'll see it. I mean, it's distinctly red. If they're real red, they're chewing heavy on crawfish, right? Sometimes you'll find a claw in their mouth or whatever. So like early spring, I really like crawfish, and then dead in the middle of the summer, especially like when they're out deep in brush piles and stuff. Crawfish is a great bait. And then worms, really, a worm is a year-round thing. You can throw a worm all year long. It's just about kind of what you're doing with it. A Cinco, stick bait. A million different companies make different kinds. Uh, Stick baits are great almost year round because you can throw them weightless like a fluke and up shallow. You can Texas rig them and throw them with some weight on there, right? You can throw them out deep if you want. You can put them on a Carolina rig, which is where the weight's up a ways on the line and the hook's back here, so it kind of floats a little bit and you drag it. That's another really good way to do a worm. But then you have these big, like 11-inch curly tail, like monster worms that people are like, there's no way a fish eats that.
They're like 7, 8 inches or something like that.
Oh, they're 11 inches.
11 inches
They're
big.
huge. There's a man's jelly worm that's 14 inches. It's a monster. And you would be surprised. Even smaller fish try to eat them. But you can catch, like, especially in the summer, really big fish on those big worms. That's a summertime thing. So when you're roaming around trying to find the offshore stuff, like a brush pile or a rock pile or whatever it is, if you see fish on one, drag a Carolina rig through there with a big worm or a shaky head, just kind of a weight and a hook, and it sits up a little bit. And so the worm's kind of angled up and it kind of just drags like that. And it just pisses them off. So they bite it. I love it. But yeah, you can fish a worm all year long.
I hope everybody's taking notes. I actually have a question. Sorry, Merriel, I know you've been trying to get in here, but I have one question that I've been trying to get in. So I think the answer probably has to do with density, but what's the difference between like a lead weight and a tungsten? Because tungsten is like kind of like bass fishing is everywhere, tungsten weights.
Yeah.
But when I'm thinking about it, like, why can't you use lead? So is it like a density thing, or what? Why is tungsten a thing in bass fishing?
Yeah. Yeah, tungsten's very dense, right? It's heavy. And so you can use a smaller weight and get the same weight as a bigger lead weight, right? So really it's a compactness thing for one, but two, tungsten, there's something about the composition of it where you can feel things better, even bites. But you can really feel the bottom. So like we'll go over stuff with electronics. We'll see something, we're like, oh, it's rocks, right? And then I'll throw a tungsten weight down there or a tungsten jig and drag it across, and it's actually not rocks. It's like little clumps of grass, right? And you can feel the difference. It's a very sensitive metal on there, and that's really the difference, right? It's the heavier weight for the smaller space, and then just how sensitive it is. You can feel things better. But I mean, I still use lead stuff too. For bullet weights, I don't. Like egg weights and bullet weights, I don't, right? Because those get stuck in stuff a lot, especially if you're dragging a Carolina rig. Imagine dragging a big old egg weight through a bunch of choppy rocks, right? How often you would have to break that off. It's horrible. So I like the little tungsten weights because they're heavy, but you can get them down in there and you can get them out of stuff. And they're just very hard weights. They're hard to destroy. So, but there's old school bass guys that won't use them. And the reason they won't use them is because they are so hard. So when they get caught in things like rocks, um, lead will just kind of, you know how lead, you can shave pieces off of it. So lead will kind of give way eventually, and they can eventually pull their weight out. And it's all jacked up, but they got their weight back, right? They didn't have to break off. So that's kind of a perk to lead. Some people still use lead for that reason. But I mean, jigs, it doesn't really matter as much, in my opinion. Um, your jigs, you're able to feel them. I mean, they're really on the bottom. So
Well, Merrill, did you want to ask anything? We're approaching up on the hour, but I definitely want to give you a chance to ask any more questions for bass fishing.
Yeah, no, I do got more questions, but we'll have to maybe do it on another bass segment.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I wanted to thank you again for joining us on late notice, but I think this has been a very fruitful and engaging conversation that we had. I learned a lot from just this short little hour, and thanks again.
yeah, absolutely. Tell Curtis just to cook the bass up like fried redfish, baby. Delicious.
Oh, yeah. Curtis is asking, tell me your bass recipe you like. So it's fried up just like your redfish.
Just tell Curtis you can't keep anything over 18 inches. That's it. That's the state law, right? Yeah, state law.
Heard it from Tim. State law. I can't keep anything over 18 inches.
Exactly. It's a new state law that you didn't hear about.
Well, uh, again, thanks a lot, Tim.
Yeah, man.
Do you have any shout outs you want to make out? Like I don't know if you have Instagram or anything like that.
He
Or
also has a guide service, right? You still have a guide service, Tim?
Oh man, I'm too busy. I'm like you. I started I started adulting, and that went by the wayside. Um, no, hey, honestly, one shout out I want to give is to the guys up at H&H Rods and Fin Factory. They just opened up a shop up here in the Woodlands. You know, I want to give them a shout out because we don't really have anybody on the north side, right? Yeah, exactly. Those guys did a great job on their spots. Cool space. So if you're up on the north side of Houston, definitely go check them out. Go support that shop. You know, we've needed one up here for a while. It's nice to actually have one up here in the community. You know, there's a lot of saltwater guys up here. I even go fish the salt. You know, so it's just nice to have somewhere to go where we can get our kayaks and get service done. And so go check them out. They're over here in the Woodlands.
awesome. Yeah. So before we hop off, definitely want to give another shout out to our sponsors, Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a Facebook group, talk kayaking and fishing on here on the Texas coast, go ahead and hop on over there. Foray Printing, they make a lot of our custom gear, such as towels and buffs, and of course, Knocking Tail Lures. That it's a paddle tail with a rattle built in. It's awesome for assault, and I'm sure it's great for freshwater as well. Could probably use that and throw that around.
No, you can,
Um,
man. 100%.
100%. Yeah, and again, for those of you listening, hey, give us shoot us a comment, or do you want to hear more bass fishing stuff, or send us a review on our show. We love to hear from y'all, see how we're doing, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. Just want to hear from you. Facebook.com/one last cast podcast, or whatever podcasting platform you're listening from. If they have a review feature, leave us a review. Just want to hear from y'all. Thanks again, y'all. And this has been One Last Cast podcast. Y'all guys have a good one.
Take care.